Over the past couple of years, tons of NBA insiders have discussed many potential trades that could have happened, and some have had more legitimate traction than others, but nevertheless, they're always entertaining to think about. This past week, a sports journalist and Golden State Warriors reporter from The Athletic named Ethan Strauss released a new book called Victory Machine, where he discusses various behind-the-scenes operations that it took to create and develop the Warriors dynasty. One of the major stories to come out of his book, which tons of news outlets have been discussing, is just how often Steph Curry was shopped as a trade asset, with the biggest trade being Steph and Klay Thompson to the New Orleans Hornets in exchange for Chris Paul. Now, obviously, New Orleans ended up trading CP3 to the LA Clippers in mid-December after a deal with the Lakers was vetoed by the late NBA commissioner David Stern. As for the Warriors, you have to remember that Curry was dealing with some ankle issues and there were no real signs that he was going to pan out and revolutionize the game of basketball like he did. As for Klay, Golden State selected him 11th overall in 2011, so when these trade talks occurred, he hadn't even appeared in an NBA game yet. Now, before we get into the rest of this video, there's a couple things I want to explain. NBA 2K simulation can be kinda whack at times, so this took a lot of work and a lot of attempts to get the most realistic simulation I could. Even in this simulation, tons of the things that happened may not reflect the most realistic outcomes of this deal, but there's no question that this trade would have changed the entire future of the NBA. So, without further ado, let's see what would have happened. Throughout this video, I'm going to be following the three major teams affected by this deal: LA, New Orleans, and the Golden State Warriors. But I'll make sure to mention any crazy deals, signings, and draft picks that would change the entire landscape of the league, and believe me, there were lots. Starting with 2011 and 12, this was definitely one of the most important seasons for the future effects of the three teams we're focusing on. The Warriors trade for Chris Paul, sending Curry and Klay to New Orleans, meaning that the Clippers roster doesn't change at all. New Orleans realizes the potential that this future group has, and they make some trades for the future, trading Jarrett Jack to the Lakers for the 2014 first-round pick and Josh McRoberts, also sending Trevor Ariza and Reggie Evans to the Suns for Robin Lopez. That first-round pick New Orleans acquired is huge, and you're going to want to remember it. Klay struggled with injuries in his first year, including a torn right elbow which kept him out 6 weeks, while Curry broke out, averaging 30 points per game, setting a franchise record in threes in a single game with 11, while also making his first All-Star appearance in his career. They still finished 10th in the West, but the future's looking bright in New Orleans. As for the Warriors, their appearance in the standings didn't change in comparison to the real 2012 Warriors, but Chris Paul is still an All-Star, and being the competitor he is not enjoying his time in San Francisco. The Clippers are probably the most surprising team in the league, as they trade Chauncey Billups to the Lakers for Greg Oden and a 2015 first-round pick, giving Kobe and the Lakers the point guard they wanted, while also giving the Clippers a potential top-end pick in 2015. The Clippers somehow get 26 more wins than last season, with little changes in their roster, as they are the only team of the three to make it to the playoff, where Blake Griffin and Eric Gordon carry them to a Western Conference final, only to lose to Kobe and the Lakers. LeBron wins MVP, Kyrie Irving wins Rookie of the Year, Curry gets Most Improved Player, and the Lakers beat the Miami Heat in 6 games to take home the championship, with Kobe winning Finals MVP. There were a couple of significant deals in this offseason, as the Warriors signed Kevin Garnett to provide another incentive for Chris Paul to stay. The Pelicans reunite Curry and Klay with Andre Iguodala, and Dwight Howard signs with the Denver Nuggets in what is arguably the biggest deal that will affect the NBA moving forward. Now on to the 2013 season, the Clippers continue to remain aggressive during this competitive window they have, and trade Al-Farouq Aminu and Caron Butler to the Bulls for Luol Deng, and end up even better than they were last season, getting 12 more wins and finishing first in the West. Eric Gordon and Blake Griffin continue to have monster seasons in LA, as Gordon averages 28 points per game and Griffin averages 27 and 12 rebounds. As for the Warriors, their first season with Garnett does not go as planned. Chris Paul breaks his leg early in the season, and the Warriors are forced to trade Austin Rivers for Kyle Lowry to start, which would lead to yet another year at the bottom of the standings. The Pelicans front office continues to make some crazy good moves, trading Emeka Okafor for JaVale McGee, where there are now 4 key pieces of the Warriors dynasty on the Pelicans. Curry, Klay, Iggy, and Mr. Shackton himself, JaVale McGee, have a much better year, where they sneak into the playoffs at a 7 seed. Curry has another great regular season and averages 29 points per game, where Klay is still struggling to break out, averaging just 10 points per game. New Orleans is the biggest surprise in these playoffs, where it seems that playoff Curry has come alive a little early in his career, advancing all the way to the Western Conference Finals where they face the Clippers. But Eric Gordon and Blake Griffin are on a mission to win their first ring and prove to be too much for this young Pelicans group, making it to the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat, where they take down LeBron and company to win their first championship in franchise history, and Blake Griffin takes home Finals MVP. Despite his finals loss, LeBron wins back-to-back MVPs and Dwight Howard wins Defensive Player of the Year in his first season with the Nuggets, where he averaged a whopping 25 points per game, 25 rebounds, and 4 blocks. Yeah, there is your first instance of 2K being whack. As for the draft, the Wizards are still bad, even with Anthony Davis, and select Giannis Antetokounmpo 3rd overall. Yes, that is correct. Giannis and AD are on the same team in the Eastern Conference. The potential for that is insane. If that wasn't crazy enough, prepare yourself for this offseason, because after winning a title, Blake Griffin leaves the Clippers and joins forces with Dwayne Wade to join the Boston Celtics, to make a starting five that still includes Rondo and Paul Pierce. Paul George clearly sees the super teams being built in the East and hops on over to Houston in free agency, signing a 4-year deal with the Rockets, which no longer fills the desire for Houston to go after James Harden, and he re-signs to the Thunder for 3 years on a team-friendly deal. And to top it all off, the Pelicans would even get involved as they signed Serge Ibaka to a 3-year deal. After all of these crazy moves, the 2014 NBA season was shaping up to be one of the wildest ones yet, and it would not disappoint. The Clippers are desperately missing Blake Griffin and struggle to remain competitive this season, and as they prepare to re-sign DeAndre Jordan, they cannot afford to pay Eric Gordon the money he will likely ask for. So, in a blockbuster deal, the Clippers sent Eric Gordon and a first-round pick to the Spurs in exchange for Tony Parker and Kawhi Leonard. Now, it's important to remember that while some of these trades may seem completely insane in the context of the actual NBA, Eric Gordon was one of the top shooting guards in this simulation, and Kawhi hadn't panned out yet. So even after trading their best asset in Eric Gordon, the Clippers still look really good with the core of Parker, Kawhi, and DeAndre Jordan. But unfortunately, the first season was already too far gone, and they missed the playoffs just 1 year after winning a championship. In his second year with the Warriors, KG tears his ACL and is out for the season, leaving Chris Paul alone once again to fend for himself. He averages a career-high 30 points per game, and the Golden State Warriors still miss the playoffs. Chris Paul has made it known to the Warriors management that he will not be re-signing next year. As for the Pelicans, the big man duo of Ibaka and McGee seems to have worked out well, as both of them average 15 points per game and provide some solid defense as well. Klay Thompson has still not made it into the starting lineup, but Curry is able to carry the scoring load, and New Orleans gets 12 more wins, placing 3rd in the West and leading the Pelicans to their 2nd straight playoff appearance. The Pelicans defeat the Timberwolves in the first round, but face off against the first-seeded Denver Nuggets led by Dwight Howard, as they sweep New Orleans and eventually beat LeBron and the Miami Heat in the finals. LeBron wins yet another MVP, making it 3 in a row now, but has yet to win a championship in this simulation. The Pelicans seem to be the only team so far that hasn't broken apart at all, and things would only get better for them from here on out, as the Lakers finished last in the West and the 2014 first-round pick they acquired would turn into Andrew Wiggins at the draft. Now, coming into this draft, Wiggins was one of the most highly respected prospects, and who knows how he could pan out with this Pelican squad. As for some other notable draft picks, the Warriors get future All-Star center Nikola Jokic, and the Cavs get one of the best centers in the NBA, Joel Embiid. Just like it was anticipated, Chris Paul leaves Golden State, but Kawhi also leaves the Clippers, and Andre Drummond leaves the Hornets, and all of them sign with the Brooklyn Nets to form yet another potential super team. This group has the potential to win multiple championships as their careers move forward. Since LeBron is determined to win a championship in Miami, Kyrie Irving declines his player option and leaves Cleveland to join the Warriors, along with Chris Bosh, who also left the Miami Heat. In an attempt to remain competitive, LeBron recruits a young DeMarcus Cousins to his squad, signing a 3-year deal worth $96 million. Heading into 2015, this last offseason for the Warriors was huge. Even though they lost Chris Paul, they gained 2 stars in Kyrie Irving and Chris Bosh to replace KG, who would retire due to the severity of his injury in the past season. And they also drafted Nikola Jokic. This is a huge 1-year turnaround that could almost immediately make them competitive. But, of course, that doesn't happen. Injuries seem to be the biggest issue for the Warriors throughout this simulation, as Kyrie goes out for 3 months with some serious knee issues, while Jokic struggles in his first year in the league to make himself a presence. The Clippers have a serious bounce back, as their major signings were only Nick Young and Thaddeus Young in the offseason, and they seem to be all they needed to replace Kawhi and Eric Gordon. DeAndre Jordan and Tony Parker create their own version of Lob City and make it to the playoffs as they get 29 more wins than last season and finish third in the West. The Brooklyn Nets super team proves to be deadly this season as Chris Paul has fulfilled his competitive spirit and they finish second in the East heading back into the postseason. As for the Pelicans, Curry wins the scoring title and Wiggins fits perfectly into the lineup as a rookie coming off the bench and averaging 16 points per game. Klay Thompson has finally made his way into the starting lineup after having a strong regular season, and their playoff dynamic proves to be one of the best in the Western Conference. The Clippers are eliminated in the first round and Luol Deng is fed up, declining a contract extension and making him a free agent in the upcoming offseason. The Pelicans make their way back to the conference finals, which included a series sweep against the defending champion Denver Nuggets and face off against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Throughout the playoffs, Curry has been balling, averaging 35 points per game and putting up a 55-point game against the Thunder in Game 1 of their series. After a hard-fought 7-game series, James Harden would prove to be the X-factor as he dropped 41 points in Game 7 to send OKC to the finals against Blake Griffin, Dwayne Wade, and the Boston Celtics, where OKC would take home their first championship. LeBron wins yet another MVP, making it 4 in a row, and Wiggins takes home Rookie of the Year, which is good news for the Pelicans because Andre Iguodala declined a contract extension with the team, which would likely make Wiggins the starting small forward after Iguodala's contract expires next season. The Clippers had a lot of issues to deal with in the offseason as Luol Deng was prepared to walk, along with the fact that Tony Parker could no longer be the starting point guard if they wanted to contend in the West. So the Clippers make an insane trade, sending Luol Deng, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and 2 first-round picks for Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Once again, in the context of this simulation, Luol Deng was coming off of a season in which he averaged 23 points per game. Now, while that doesn't make sense at all, it gives reason as to why this trade seemed to have an even value. So this trade would give the Clippers a franchise center and a small forward, and they didn't stop there. Los Angeles later signed a young Drew Holiday to take over their starting point guard spot in hopes that he could grow to become an all-star point guard alongside Embiid and Butler. But the biggest signing of this offseason, and maybe this entire simulation, is Kevin Durant signing with the Houston Rockets to join Paul George and Draymond Green just 1 year after winning a championship. Ladies and gentlemen, once a snake, always a snake. Luckily for Westbrook, James Harden still remains a member of the Thunder, giving them the chance to still remain competitive for the years to come. As for the 2015 draft, Karl Anthony Towns gets selected first overall by the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Warriors select Kristaps Porzingis with the second overall pick. With these selections, the Warriors could have a dynasty of their own, coming soon with Kyrie Irving, Nikola Jokic, and now Porzingis. Now we are at the 2016 NBA season, and each one of these 3 teams we've been following have a solid chance to contend for a title. Somehow, the Pelicans have 5 players who have played for the real Golden State Warriors, and Klay Thompson is finally coming into his own this year, averaging 19 points along with Curry's 29, sending them to the playoffs. Everyone on the Warriors have great individual years. Kyrie averages 25, Kristaps 17, and Jokic with 18, but they unfortunately just miss out on the playoffs, finishing 9th in the West. The Warriors are confident in their group, and everyone seems on board after this disappointing finish, and they remain intact moving on to the next season. It was a similar situation for the Clippers this year, as they just barely missed out on the playoffs as well, mainly due to DeAndre Jordan and Joel Embiid both struggling with injuries throughout the entire year. As for the other teams surrounding the league, the Rockets dominated the West as Kevin Durant averaged 36 points per game and took home his first MVP, finally dethroning LeBron James from that title. The Thunder also managed to make it to the playoffs while only losing 8 less games than the season before, as Westbrook and Harden both averaged 28. The Pelicans continue their amazing playoff success, defeating the Rockets in the conference finals and taking on the Chicago Bulls, with a chance to take home their first title. The Bulls were carried by a healthy Derrick Rose, who never actually suffered an injury in the 2012 season, and averaged 30 points per game in this postseason. Heading into this series, Curry was day-to-day after suffering a knee sprain, but luckily made it back in time for Game 1 of their finals appearance. The Pelicans' depth proved to be too much for the Bulls to handle, and the New Orleans Pelicans captured their first title in the Curry and Klay era, with Steph taking home Finals MVP. So it took an extra year, but Curry still has cemented himself as one of the best point guards in the league after winning a chip. In the draft, the biggest changes were that the Charlotte Hornets selected Ben Simmons first overall, while Jaylen Brown went second to the 76ers. After many major off-seasons, nothing seriously changed in the NBA this year, with the biggest move being Andre Iguodala, who left to join the Raptors, which paved the way for Andrew Wiggins to become the starting small forward in New Orleans. 2017 is the point in this video where I realized just how tired I am and how much work this actually takes to properly put together. So if you guys are still watching and enjoy this, if you could leave a like and hit subscribe, it would mean a lot. And it gives me a good idea that you guys actually enjoy these types of videos so I can make more. Anyways, the Clippers, Warriors, and Pelicans all make the playoffs this year, so this is the first real instance where we get to see that the strength in the West is still prominent, but just with some new teams and players in the mix. The Clippers and Pelicans face off in the first round, and unfortunately for the Clippers, they take a 7-game series and lose at home to New Orleans, but they still remain confident in the group that they have and just leave it up to the fact that they're a young team who ran into the defending champions. The Warriors made it to the playoffs as the third best team in the West, but unfortunately entered the postseason without Kyrie Irving, who tore his MCL and is out for the playoffs, leaving Kyle Lowry to take over at point guard. Golden State would make it to the second round, but would inevitably lose to KD and the Rockets. The Pelicans also ran into a hot Houston team with Paul George and Draymond being far too much to handle on top of guarding Kevin Durant. New Orleans loses in 5 games, and the Rockets make it to the finals where they would get swept to Anthony Davis, Giannis, and the Wizards for their first championship in this simulation. The Pelicans know this window of compete they have with Curry as their leader is crucial to build around, so they go out and sign Rudy Gobert to a 4-year deal, having McGee now come off the bench. Pretty lethal combo there. As for the Warriors, they go out and sign Dennis Schroeder, Wesley Matthews, and Eric Bledsoe in order to have some more depth for the playoffs. And after one quiet offseason, the rest of the league went crazy again. Paul George leaves Houston and joins the Nuggets, who lost Dwight Howard in this free agency to the Indiana Pacers. And Giannis looks to run it back after re-signing with the Wizards. So I know at this point I'm kind of moving very fast through a lot of stuff, but there is a lot more ahead. So I'll do my best to kind of track everything down for you guys so you can take a look. But yeah, let's move on. 2018 is a huge year for Andrew Wiggins as he averages 22 points per game, and after a tough first half of the season as McGee and Gobert struggle with injuries, the Pelicans go on a very Warriors-like 15-game win streak to put them in at 3rd seed in the West. Jokic and Porzingis are thriving on the Warriors as Jokic averages 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 assists, while Porzingis averages 22 points and 8 rebounds. The Warriors finish second in the West, and it becomes clear that if nothing comes out of this postseason, Jokic and Kyrie could be on their way out. For the Clippers, since they remained content with their team and everyone else got better, their lineup is just not deep enough to contend, missing the playoffs yet again. The Warriors and Pelicans face off in the second round of the 2018 playoffs, and it went to 7 games, but the Warriors are just no match for the Pelicans, who are now without a doubt the best team in the NBA, as they take back-to-back championships after defeating the Bucks. And Steph Curry is a beast, averaging 35 points per game in the playoffs and getting his second Finals MVP. To the surprise of everyone across the league, Nikola Jokic is awarded MVP after turning his team around this season, which will be a massive factor into where he goes this offseason. While Ben Simmons wins Rookie of the Year and Dwight Howard wins Defensive Player of the Year yet again. The 2018 draft remained pretty much the same, except Luka Doncic goes to the Miami Heat, 7th overall, after LeBron has struggled to connect many wins with DeMarcus Cousins. Because of this, LeBron elects to stay in Miami to test how Luka does alongside him. In the offseason, Jokic decides to sign with KD and Draymond in Houston, in what would be a very strong contender. But it turns out Kevin Durant decides to leave Houston and head back the other way to Golden State. The Warriors lose Kyrie Irving to the Pacers, but have luckily prepared Eric Bledsoe to step in as their starting point guard. The Warriors also signed Marc Gasol in the offseason to replace Jokic, and Kristaps Porzingis can sense a championship coming his way. Moving on to the 2019 season, KD proves to be the player to put the Warriors over the edge as they defeat the Pelicans in the Western Conference Final and move on to capture their first title against the 76ers, making KD a 2-time champ and 2-time Finals MVP. And this is where my game crashes. I physically cannot go past the free agency period in this season without my game instantly closing, so I took this as a sign to say that I was done. It turns out that majority of the players affected in this simulation were outside of the 3 teams we covered, and that Steph Curry was likely destined for greatness regardless of what team he played on. Of course, for Chris Paul, his career was pretty much the same in the fact that the Nets tried to build around him as a point guard, but the regular season success could never convert to championships. As much as I know how difficult it was to make this video, I had a lot of fun doing it, because putting some of the best players in the world into unknown situations to to see how they perform is something that all sports fans should be fascinated by. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this video. I know my channel is mainly based around hockey, but I plan to do more videos like this, so hit subscribe if you did enjoy, and leave a comment telling me what you thought was realistic and what wasn't about this video. And I'll see you guys next time.